This is Yotoko speaking on October 25th. I don't know why, but I've had a really hard time writing this script. Maybe it's because I've been very busy this week with videos and shorts, or maybe I just need a break. Whatever the case, I might take a day off soon. Since I started these videos, I haven't played anything in my free time. Not Silksong nor Pokemon Legends. I think I'll log into WoW for a bit soon. About today's video, as always, there's some cut content here and there, but the cut content that even I didn't remember, and which I think is important, is about Satella. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, right in episode 7, there was an important mention of her that was unfortunately omitted. Before we start, as always, a thank you to the members who pay for the most expensive tier on the channel. A thank you to the user named Masa and the other named Subaru. I'd like to dedicate some words to you, but I'm just getting to know you guys and I haven't seen any comments from you on the channel, so I prefer to be honest and not make things up. In any case, thank you very much for your financial support. Also, a thank you to the 4 guys on the English channel who are there watching my content. Welcome to Cut Content from the first season, episode number 7. Episode 7 begins with Subaru discovering the killer's identity and covers everything up to the moment where Subaru ends his life at the cliff. Broadly speaking, I have mixed feelings. I don't know if I prefer the anime's version or the novel's version, and you'll understand why when I show you the following example. You see, in the scene where Subaru was commenting on the revelation of Rem's identity, I think we can all agree that it's a serious moment because of the impact of the reveal and all that. The anime handles this tense aura well, but in the novel, out of nowhere, Subaru makes silly comments where he thinks Rem looks sexy with a weapon like that and other out-of-place remarks. It's like, really? We're in an important moment. Don't ruin the mood, Subaru. Although I must admit that maybe others might like this detail, but personally, it killed my immersion and hype in this scene very quickly. But this wasn't the only cringy example I remember. In fact, in the middle of Subaru's torture, Rem says it's getting late for her to make dinner, and then the protagonist asks her what she'll prepare for dinner. That way, they end up talking for a moment about the food that was going to be made that night. At least the anime omitted these dialogues, improving the adaptation in my opinion, and that's why I say I don't know if I should say the anime was better. Other things that were left out were Subaru's perspective on the situation, which helps to understand why this revelation about Rem affects him so much. Let's remember that Subaru is a failure who, after a long time in isolation, is just now forging social relationships. So, finding out that these relationships were fake and that they only did it because they were watching him, well, it breaks and shatters the self-esteem he gained from these small social interactions. He thought so little of himself and came to despise himself so much that he even began to doubt if he was worthy of Emilia's care and concern, which is why, in this part, he even starts to doubt her. The curious thing is that even so, he still cherished those memories that no one else remembered, and that's why in the novel it's made clear that he didn't stab Rem out of respect for those memories. After that, Subaru would die from the wind cut that Ram threw at him, and that's it. Although, an interesting detail happens here that I just realized today, a detail that, unironically, I think gives a lot of points to this episode. I don't want to spoil it for you now, but I ask you to keep in mind that when Subaru is killed, he was about to say some words but is stopped by the final cut he receives. After this, Subaru wakes up and, well, he starts screaming when he sees the maids. There wasn't much to cut here. For the most part, everything happens as it does in the anime. Subaru, due to his traumas, is an idiot to Emilia. He tries to reveal his power, fails, Rosewall comes, and so on. Although the novel adds something interesting to this part, once again, it touches on the pain Subaru feels, and the protagonist expresses exactly how he feels about the sisters in this loop. Remember that the anime's Subaru thinks only Rem is against him, but the novel's Subaru thinks both sisters are against him. That's why when he reflects on how he feels about them, he says that this melancholic feeling he has is as deep as the positive bonds he formed with the twins in the first loops. His distrust for them was so great that it said Subaru spent 2 days without eating anything they offered him. He was afraid the food was poisoned and didn't feel he could run away either because if he did, they would surely hunt him down. The paranoia was so intense that he used a nearby feathered pen to cut his skin when he felt he was about to fall asleep. He was afraid to close his eyes and not wake up again. In fact, Beatrice detects this self-harm and criticizes him for it. Perhaps that was another reason why she agreed to make the pact to protect him until the dawn of the 4th day. As Subaru was now calmer due to Beatrice's visit, Emilia goes to see him a little later, and only then does Subaru agree to eat if she's the one who feeds him, to which Emilia, being the angel that she is, agrees to feed him. And something interesting would happen here. It doesn't happen at this moment in the novel, but it does happen later, specifically at the end of the second season. Remember that this loop we are in is a failed loop, right? This loop will end when Subaru jumps off the cliff, so in theory, everything that happens here will not be remembered by anyone but him. So, why the hell at the end of the second season does a point come where Amelia feeds Subaru by mouth, and she comments that she feels like she has done this before? I don't want to say that Amelia remembers past loops, but this all sounds very suspicious. But getting back to episode 7, the hatred Subaru feels for the sisters wavers a bit when, upon being fed by Amelia, she mentions that the food he is eating at this moment is an easy-to-digest meal that was specially prepared by Rem, in consideration of Subaru's condition. I honestly feel very sorry for Subaru at this moment. It's like he wants to find an excuse to hate the sisters, but seeing all these contradictory signals makes it difficult for him to accept that conclusion. Subaru then says goodbye, but not before warning Puck to take care of Amelia that night. Then comes the scene of Subaru's dreams, where you really have to pay attention to the sequence, as it is fundamental to understanding the resolution of this part of the story. Personally, the first time I saw ReZero, I didn't understand this sequence, and that made me have a wrong perception of this arc. But basically, in this part, we see Subaru's thoughts and fears regarding his situation. But the part where he seems to calm down because someone is holding his hands is not part of the nightmare, but is actually Rem and Ram comforting him while he sleeps in real time. Now that I think about it in retrospect, it was most likely Ram who suggested helping Subaru since Rem didn't hold him in high esteem these days. Something interesting to add is that in side stories from these days, we are told that this practice of the twins holding someone's hand in their dreams is a somewhat old custom of theirs. I remember that in the first days Rem and Ram lived in the mansion. It is said that back then Ram's body was not yet used to living without its horn, and this caused her physical discomfort. Therefore, Rem used to hold her hands at night to help her through the hard time. Then when Rem had nightmares or was sick, her older sister would do the same for her. That's why, since the maids saw Subaru suffering so much those days for the simple fact of existing, they took pity on him and helped him in his dreams. Eventually, this act of kindness would be key to an important decision, but we'll get to that. Another detail that would have been cool to adapt but was left out because they were on a tight schedule is the detail of Beatrice's contract with the library. It's mentioned here, but since that's a topic for the second season, well, they omitted it. Then, during Rem's death, there is actually a longer and more interesting chat when Betty and Roswaal confront each other. It's a chat where they insult each other, and it's truly a shame they cut it because these insults kind of gave more personality to both of them. Before moving to the final sequence, I'd like to tell you something interesting. I think we all know that Roswaal and Ram have a closer relationship than the Marquis has with the younger sister. This is again explained in their novel and has nothing to do with what was revealed in the second season, but I mention this because in the alternate routes of Lim, we can get a variable where the twin who dies is Ram, and it is Rem who mourns her death. Unlike the main story where Roswaal is barely moved by what happened, in LEM we see Roswaal genuinely affected by the event. I remember seeing the illustrations at the time, but I didn't save the footage, so I'm sorry I can't show you the reference I'm talking about. Now, we arrive at the cliff scene. This scene is my favorite of the episode, and I think you can guess why. But what you didn't know is that this scene only recently became my favorite. That is, while I was writing the script. Before, of course, I liked it, but now I like it more. And I hope you can understand why. In itself, the anime adapted almost everything in its entirety. But due to certain differences between the animated version and the novel version, the Subaru who jumps at the end does so for slightly different reasons than his other counterpart. Since the anime's Subaru doesn't realize yet that it was Ram who killed him in the previous loops, his main reason for jumping is to repay the kindness the sisters showed him and his feeling of guilt for believing they were the worst of the worst when they were also victims of someone else. However, the novel's Subaru realized, a little before jumping, that it was Ram who killed him in the previous loop, and this change made him think a little more about whether he should redo things for them or not. Of course, in the end, we know he will end up jumping, but this little detail makes it harder for Subaru to decide what we already know he will decide. It is because Subaru had to reflect on this additional piece of information that he ends up saying he will jump, because he appreciates and loves the sisters who cared for a nobody like him. In fact, unlike his last death, where he dies without being able to say that he loves them, now he dies while saying the things he couldn't finish saying in the previous loop. Honestly, I don't know how I didn't realize that the episode ended with the word Subaru couldn't pronounce before, and this detail makes me hold episode 7 of the first season in much higher esteem. And I hope this has impressed you as much as it impressed me. Although we finished the most interesting part of the chapter, there's still something that won't be exciting but has to do with another of the series' mysteries. You see, when Subaru dies, we see how he instantly comes back to life. But sometimes it happens that this process takes a little while, and in that delay time, Subaru's soul or consciousness visits someone. The person he visits is Satella, or maybe the witch. Honestly, even I don't know. This is something that doesn't always happen, it only happens sometimes, but here I will post the record of the first meeting Subaru had with her. The meeting that happens right after Subaru jumps off the cliff, but was unfortunately omitted from the anime.
All that was there was nothingness. Absent-mindedly, he looked around the nothingness of his mind. Perhaps looked around was not the proper phrase. Eyes did not exist within his mind, nor did hands nor feet, nor any pieces of his body. All that remained was his incorporeal floating mind. Knowing nothing, aware of nothing, he looked about. Darkness. A room with nothing. A room that was a world without a floor, or a ceiling, covered in pitch blackness, so great that it defied thought. Suddenly, in the world of everlasting darkness, there was meaning. A silhouette abruptly emerged in front of his mind. The contours of the silhouette were slender, and as pitch black as the rest, the upper body more of a fog, rejecting his mind's recognition. With the emergence of the human shape, the mind gained its first strong desire. He felt a breach in the cold as the shadow gently moved, as if to convey something to his mind. He didn't understand. He was aware of nothing, but for some reason his mind could not avert itself from the shadow. I cannot meet you, not yet. With that faint whisper, the dark world abruptly vanished, and in so doing, the shadow and his mind went with it.
Don't ask me for explanations, as I'm also confused. So let's go to the next part. Another week, another few hours that... I'm too tired for the usual intro, let's just get started. First, the author loved the first opening of ReZero so much that he played it 2,000 times. Remember that this is a tweet from May 2016, so the official count has probably changed by now. Second, the author adds the words that Roswaal said when he visited Subaru, words that weren't in the novel either. Basically, he invites him to stay until he recovers from his emotional wounds. Third, it's no surprise that the author comments that he loves writing Subaru's deaths, so this tweet where he says that the scene of a desperate Subaru is his favorite, well, it's not surprising either. Fourth, the author refers to the first contract between Subaru and Bayako. He says it this way because in the future, the two will make a permanent one. Fifth, the author comments that it's rare for a confrontation between Roswaal and Bayako to happen, although I remember reading elsewhere that the fight didn't last long and was stopped instantly. Sixth, the author praises the voice acting of Ram's Seiyu when reacting to Rem's death. Honestly, the desperate scream suited a character who is always keeping her composure very well. Seventh, the author asks us to remember the cliff because it will eventually be an important setting in the fight against Betelgeuse as well. Eighth, the author comments on how in this scene Ram is not wearing her head accessory. I'm putting this here because I hadn't noticed the pink-haired girl's appearance either. Ninth, it seems that during production there was a lot of debate about whether to match the impact of Subaru hitting the ground with the sound of the letters. 10th, the author refers to how the relationship between Roswaal and the sisters evolved. He comments that it's lore that came with the purchase of the anime's Blu-ray. If you're wondering, it's lore that talks about how Rem and Ram met Roswaal and settled in the mansion, as well as narrating how the sisters got revenge on the cultists who destroyed their village. I know I always say the break time surprised me, but this break time surprised me much, much more than usual. And that's because, believe me, in both the anime and the novel, Beatrice and Subaru didn't talk at all when the protagonist spent the night in the library. But the break time takes the trouble to create some interactions that the little girl and Subaru had that dawn. There's nothing interesting about the lore, it's just random nonsense between Subaru and Beatrice. But I think being a fan of this franchise isn't just about being interested in the lore, but also in how the characters interact in their moments of peace. So, I strongly recommend you watch it. It's only a few minutes, but as I always say, it's a few minutes that you'll remember for much longer in your head because of how good it is. And that has been the entire recap for today. Honestly, I think making these videos is taking a lot out of me. It's not that I don't enjoy it, quite the contrary, but maybe I have to change the upload schedule for this, or maybe I just need a little rest. I'll think about this after making episode 8, as I have to send this script to the editor. As I always say, a like and a comment help the video like you have no idea. They can be the difference between a video with low reach and one that's well received. So tell me, what did you think of the cut content from this episode?